As part of the 24-hour live stream, we welcomed on Sean Whetstone from Clarendon Hugh, and more than just a podcast, and he's obviously on the committee of the OSB. Sean does donate a very, very obscure item, which is to help raise money for Isla Catering. We've raised over £4,000 so far, so if you wish to donate, the link is in the description below. But if you wish to bid on the item which Sean has, you can do so by emailing us, hammerschat@gmail.com. Now, the top bid at the time of recording is £65. So get in touch with us if you wish to get involved. Hope you enjoyed the video. Drop a like on it if you do. Subscribe if you're new around here. We've got plenty of content coming up from our 24-hour live stream. Hope you enjoy it. See you in a bit. Anyway, would you like to introduce yourself for those who may not know you? You're Mr. Anonymous on Twitter in a way.
Yeah. Well, I'm West Ham Football on Twitter. And in fact, it's my 10-year anniversary from starting on Twitter. I started May 2009. That's where I started. And then from there, I moved on to writing for Ian Dale on West Ham Till I Die. I joined the SAB in 2011, just before we started working on the whole, the Olympic Stadium, London Stadium project. And I joined Clarendon Hugh as associate editor about 5-6 years ago. And of course, forgetting, I'm also a presenter along with Nigel on More Than Just a Podcast. We've just finished our 8th season there. So yeah, it's crazy. 8 years of doing the podcast and about to start our 9th.
A busy man. You're probably one of the longest ones going then, are you? The sort of in the West Ham social media world. Is anyone...
I'm not sure. Twitter, certainly. I mean, when I started, the club weren't doing it. And I picked the name West Ham Football because, West Ham weren't doing Twitter. And for a long time, I was mistaken for the club. And I started off just to want to do news, really. It wasn't my content. It was other people's content. It was just sort of bringing it in one place. I like the idea of Twitter. And as time went on, I started to actually create some of that content. And here I am 10 years later.
Fantastic. Well, it's difficult it's strange with you because when the other people come on, like say Nicky, he's only got West Ham Fan TV, but with yourself, you've got fingers in so many pies, if you like. It's difficult it's where to go. But I think on social media, if you like, you're more known for Clarendon Hugh than anything, I think.
Yes.
That's how I would sort of suggest it as. So that's what I'm going to focus on a little bit. How did you get involved with Clarendon Hugh?
As I said, I was one of the authors for West Ham Till I Die with Ian Dale, and one day Hugh Southern approached me to write for him as well. For those who don't know, Hugh is an old-time journalist on the tabloids. He was a freelancer, wrote for The Sun, wrote for many different regional papers. He was the ghost. Funny enough, he worked for the Sunday Sport as well for Sullivan. And was a ghostwriter for Bobby Moore. But the one thing, he knew how old-time journalism worked. And what he didn't know is how social media worked and how blogs worked. And so we came together. He'd started it up, and I started to give him some technical advice because my background's IT and web. And so we were a good partnership. Politically, we're poles apart. We're poles apart on religion and other things, so we disagree on nearly everything, but West Ham brought us together. And I was the social media and technical person. He's got the journalism background, and we learned from each other basically. And 6 years later, it's still going strong.
There's a couple of live chat questions already. We'll take them towards the end. I'm going to dive straight into it. You're sort of known as club stooges or club puppets, if you like. Yeah, though, aren't you?
Yeah, of course.
Before in the past, you've sort of dismissed it or whatever. But does it bother you being known as that, or is that something that you consider to be almost a compliment in a way?
Yeah, well, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? So some people, mean as an insult, and that's up to them. And some people, it brings people in because people say, well, if you've got the bald's ear, then you get more information or you can get things done. And other people see it as you're just a propaganda site or a mouthpiece for the club. We see it differently, and we often laugh, myself and Hugh, because I can tell you now, we get in just as much trouble with the club every single week. We run a story the club don't like, and they will ring up and say, don't like that, or we think that's inaccurate, or we'd rather you not run that. And we have plenty of run-ins, a big one on Marko Arnautovic. You know, Marko Arnautovic signed a new contract. We heard about it. We ran the story. We were running the story before the Wimbledon game, and we were asked, and we actually agreed not to run it until the final whistle of the Wimbledon game. And that's why the club came out and did the statement they did and got criticised for it, because they knew we were running a story after the full time. So look, do we have contacts at the club? Yes. Is it just David Sullivan and David Gold? No. We talked to lots of people at the board, on and off the record. We talk to a lot of senior management at the board. We talk to a lot of people where the board don't know we talk to them. We talk to agents. We talk to other journalists. It doesn't come. It's not just David Sullivan whispering in our ear going, right, okay, we haven't got a hotline that we just write what David Sullivan says there. It doesn't work that way. We're a news site and we report the news. Sometimes it suits the club. Sometimes it doesn't suit the club. But our primary goal is to bring news to the fans. It always has been.
So if the club get annoyed at you for running certain articles, why do they sort of continue to feed you information?
Well, it's they know we're a strong brand. They know we've got a bit of sway. We have had, don't get me wrong, there have been periods of time where our information from the club has been completely switched off. You know, when the Burnley thing happened, certain people weren't talking to anyone. There have been certainly times where we've upset them, you're right, and that they won't talk to us. But it comes round that, I guess, the brand we've built and the website we've built, lots of people read it, and therefore it swings and roundabouts. Sometimes it's a positive message for the club, sometimes it's a negative message for the club. You know, recent one, obviously record renewals, 94%, positive message. But you know, a story we ran a few months ago that the new squaring off of the stands is not going to happen this summer. You know, we said, look, it's just a concept. There are no plans. It hasn't gone out to tender. You know, were the club happy with that? Absolutely not. But we try and bring the truth. We also do a lot of, or I do a lot of freedom of information. So I don't know if you see, but a lot of the London Stadium stuff, I do freedom of information for them, for Newham. I'm the bane of their lives. But again, that's to get the news out. And I do a lot of financial stuff. And again, you know, the club lost 35 million pound last season. It's not something that is a positive story. But I want to get the news out there. You know, we try and be as transparent as possible. Like X, we have to pick and choose some things, and there are some things we don't let known because we think it would harm the club. So we do have a filter. I know a lot of people will laugh at that and say there is no filter, but there is a filter.
How difficult is it to get the balance, though, between what you put out and what you keep to yourself, and what's too much positivity for the club and what's too much negative?
Yeah, it's really difficult to get that balance right, because you're right. Otherwise, we get called Sullivan's mouthpiece. We get called the board's stooges, puppets, etc. So I won't say we deliberately try and write, you know, balance of one bad story for one good story, but we just try and take every day. Hugh and myself have a conference call in the morning on my way to work, and we discuss, you know, we discuss any controversial stories. Both of us discuss it, and we discuss it, and sometimes we run it past the club, especially if, you know, someone's come to us and we don't think it might be right. We give a club, if the club say to us, we don't want you to run it, often we'll run it anyway. If there's a good reason why not to run it, we sometimes listen to that if we think it could harm the club or the supporters.
Have you ever done an article that you regret?
Many.
Which one's the one that you put out, maybe revealed something?
Well, I'm sure most people know it. It's the Declan Rice story. The Declan Rice details of his deal that was on the table at the time.
Were you asked to do that by the club?
No.
So why did they give you the information?
Well, it's a good question.
Because surely, this is my own opinion,
yeah,
they gave you that information knowing you would put it out there.
Yeah, yes, and you're right. But you asked the question: did they ask you to put it out there? And the answer was
Okay.
no.
Do you think they asked you indirectly?
Probably yes. Um, but I'm not sure that's always right. I think that sometimes information's given to us, and you think, why the hell did they do that? You know, such as Marko Arnautovic signing a new contract. You know, what good could have come from that? So certain people, and it comes from all different sources, will sometimes tell you stuff. And do you know what? And X will tell you this. And sometimes we share sources, and we obviously talk to each other, but there's a bit of competition to sometimes talk to people that will get information out there. There's a culture of leaking at West Ham, which existed before 2010, before Sullivan and Gold did there. We sometimes live in a West Ham bubble, which we think only happens at West Ham. Now, leaking from clubs happens. And one of the reasons it does happen is people are passionate about West Ham and they just can't keep secrets. I mean, the new kit was one. Some of that got leaked out, but the day before a picture came out. Now, where do you think that came from?
I have no idea.
It didn't come from the club, and it didn't come from Umbro. It came from a printer, or so I'm told, or so. So there are West Ham fans everywhere. There are West Ham fans in the Mayor of London's office. There are West Ham fans that work for the London Stadium. There are West Ham fans that work from Newham. And all of these people want to tell you information. They tell X information. They tell me information. They want to get it out there because information is being traded all the time because we're passionate about it and people want to share it. Now, a lot of people will say you shouldn't share information. It's wrong. But do you know what? The figures, when we reprint that information on Claret Hugh, say otherwise. It's a bit like people talking about the Sun newspaper and saying the Sun newspaper is an awful paper. I don't read it. It's an absolute rag. But do you know what? It's still the most read paper in the UK.
So would that not suggest then that the reason you do all this leaking is to get hits to your website?
Yeah. Look, I won't hide behind that. Of course it is. There's a two-edged sword, right? So of course. Let's not lie. Commercially, we've got adverts. Everybody knows that. Commercially, Claret Hugh is a business. But don't get me wrong. This is not my day job. I don't earn enough, like everybody else has said, and you've said yourself. This is not my main. This isn't enough for me to feed my family and pay my mortgage and do everything else. No way. So it's not just about money. It is a passion to share and be transparent of what's going on in the club and news. And do you know what? Whether you like it or not, sharing transfer rumours is all part of the game. We're not the only people that do it in this club or any club. It's all part of the game, and people love it. We think there are 100 different transfer rumours, and you think sometimes, Christ, we know we're not going to do a lot of business this summer. What are we going to write about? We wake up in the morning. This morning was one. What are we going to write about? But there's always a story. Gomez this morning. Yesterday, Gomez posted a picture of him at airport, and the rumor on social media was he was at Stansted. Right? We made some inquiries. The club are interested in Gomez. He's in Italy on holiday. So you know how these things happen, and someone from Everton said he wants to live in London. Suddenly Arsenal were linked as well as Tottenham. It's a rumour mill that drives the newspapers, that drives the fans, everything else. And if we got rid of it all, I think people would be moaning and said, well, I actually miss all the transfer rumours.
I think there's a fine line, though. I think reporting on transfer rumours is okay because you're not really revealing anything.
Yeah.
I think you sometimes leak the transfer target, if you like. I think that's where it becomes a little bit grey area, if you like.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Overstep that line sometimes. What's the biggest article you've done or whatever that you were asked to, whether directly or indirectly, to put out as a pro board thing? I can sit here and name a few articles off the top of my head if I wanted to, but what's the one that you think would be the biggest one that you've done in favour of the board?
I don't know about in favour of the board. I mean, certainly we've run polls for people like Sam Allardyce, and that's well known by people. We run a lot of polls, right? Sometimes we're asked, sometimes we're not asked. It's as simple as that. And you know,
You
it.
did one. You did one just over a year ago on
Go
Bilic.
on.
Bilic was on the brink. It was very much. Quite often after a game, you would sort of gauge how people were feeling about Slav.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point, there was one question, I think it was, who would you like to see come in and replace Slav or something like
Yeah.
that, while Slav was still here.
Yeah.
Was that from the club?
No, that one wasn't. No.
So what about the ones asking what's people's opinions on Slav?
I don't remember on Slav, if I'm honest with you. I don't think there was any ever pressure from the club for Slav. He was a nice guy. I don't remember anything around Slav in particular. I mean, it was a year ago, so it's difficult having conversations. The problem is now, any poll we put up, people think, oh, they're just trying to sound it out, etc. You could.
That's your own fault though when you do some for the club, and it's quite obvious sometimes. We surely we're right to assume that they're all then sort of nudged by the club at least, and so here,
Well, look, the time the clubs have actually asked us to run a poll are probably very few and far between. Yeah, certainly. I could count them on 10 fingers. It's not as much as you think. It's quite rare. Do we run polls we think that the club might be interested in? No, absolutely.
Okay, so do you then feed these results back to the club?
No.
But
They
obviously,
read Clowney Hugh though, right?
yeah, so you obviously know. I know that David Gold reads your site every day. I know that.
Yeah.
So you're obviously doing these questions, knowing that the owner and the co-chairman of West Ham United is going to read this poll, which could say 80% of fans want the manager sacked.
That is a possibility, yes. And some of these decisions we have to discuss, but you know when a manager's on his way out. Look, did we help with the sacking of Sam Allardyce? Probably, but I think the writing was on the wall. Did we help with the sacking of, or not? Well, it wasn't the sacking because obviously his contract wasn't renewed. Did we help the sacking of Slaven Bilic? I don't think so at all. I think the mind had been made up. As for Graham Moyes, we know the deal was already done with Pellegrini on a handsman's shake. So he was destined never to get a new contract anyway. So it's difficult to say because I don't remember every single poll and what happened. But do the board read Clowney Hugh? Absolutely. I can tell you now, if I write a story that they don't like, I will get a call sometimes within 60 seconds. People are very conscious of what they write, and sometimes players or agents will contact as well if they don't like or they think it's inaccurate as well.
So what? Give me an example of a poll you have done on behalf of the club. You said you could count them in one hand or whatever. So that means you can obviously think of a couple at least. So
yeah,
can we get an example?
I think they've been around London Stadium kind of questions. So certainly in the run up to the London Stadium, we ran a number of polls. We ran up. We certainly run one on Sam Allardyce. As I say, I can't remember exactly, so I'm guessing at 10, but because there are that few.
What about before the protest stuff before Burnley? Was there anything that you were asked to put out before the Burnley stuff? I understand afterwards they shut down communication.
Yeah.
I had got told that as well, that Sullivan had gone to ground basically for quite
a while.
He shut off all lines of communication and stuff. So I get that you post Burnley, but pre Burnley, it was quite a. See, this is why I think Sullivan's quite clever in a way. I think he uses West Ham social media to his advantage, and he has to be quiet. So I think he uses some of his friends, his connections, acquaintances, or whatever, to sort of gauge fan opinion and stuff. I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong. I think it's quite savvy to an extent, but it's the fine line again, and I do think sometimes it oversteps. And I'm just intrigued as to whether it's yourself that goes over the line or whether you're sort of nudged by the club, or i.e. the board, and to to go over that line on behalf of them? You know, because Callum Brady got a poll on their Sun call and saying, "What do you do?"
No, I think it's always our decision. You know, we like to think we're independent. At no point have we said we must run this. I mean, in most recent times, the ones we've been asked to run by the club, funny enough, are promoting Jack Sullivan's BBC.
See, I think those are harmless. I think those are harmless. There's no issue. I don't think any fan's got an issue if someone from the club messages you and says, "Can you promote this? Can you promote the new kit?"
Yeah.
Even the 94% season ticket renewal, they say, "Can you promote that?" There's no harm in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think that is where it is savvy to use fans' media to push the positive messages out there and stuff. But I do sometimes feel, as a reader of your site, that there's sometimes underhand articles, if you like, on your website, which I think there was one article that I think I'm pretty certain was yourself penned it. I should have wrote all this down.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be a bit switched on at this point. But
I deliberately picked this time so you wouldn't be switched on, Gio.
Correct me anyway. It wasn't that long ago. It was maybe a month and a half ago, and it was about finances in terms of transfers, and it was basically that Pellegrini's bought a load of players on a big wages and they've been injured, and it named Yarmolenko, Sanchez, and Jack Wilshere, which is fair enough. But what it didn't name was the fact that the board had given Arnautovic a pay rise after his tantrum. The fact that Andy Carroll was injured and that Pellegrini, I thought it was very negative towards Pellegrini, and I felt like almost like he has wasted a lot of money this season, so we're not spending 30 million. Was that yours, or was that nudged indirectly?
It was mine. I wasn't asked to run that, but obviously I need to be provided information. Was there an inference there? I don't know. That's for people to decide. All I know, I wasn't asked to write that story. I asked a question, and what happens usually in these situations, just to make people clear. And as I said, that we have many different sources in the club. We have many different sources outside the club. People don't come to us and go, "I've got an idea for a story. This is what you should write." What happens always, almost 99% of the time, is we ask a question and we get an answer. And based on that, we might ask another question. And that's how the embryo of a story works out. So that particular story was a question by us on aging players and how much they earned. And out of that came that. And I could see from the outside why it might look that someone was trying to undermine the manager. I didn't think that at the time, but I get in hindsight why people may think that.
It ties in with the culture of your website almost to an extent, because like I know some things come from the board to your website, and like I said, some of it's clever, some of it's good, but then sometimes that article will appear, and this is where you have to sort of guess whether you've done it off your own back or whether you've been asked to do it, and it's very, very difficult to gauge. And I usually err on the assumption that's come from the board, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people do, Gio. I do.
Because they've got previous for undermining managers. You know, David Sullivan sat Soccer AM not long ago, a few years ago. At the end of Allardyce's reign, I think it was, David Sullivan was on Soccer AM practically undermining Allardyce, and you know.
Yeah, I remember.
And he's reined his media presence back. But you cannot change like that overnight. You cannot go from happily sitting on Sky Sports and Soccer AM, being in newspapers and Talk Sport, ringing up Talk Sport, etc., to just do nothing overnight. And I do think he's got to have his hand in the media some way. And this is where, you know, I think it comes through yourself and Hugh, the website in general. I think this is sort of where Sullivan gauges fan media. And I think getting the message out there about the 25 million, 30 million pound budget for the summer, I think they've done it quite clever, actually, because I think when me and Gonza discussed it on Cups of Tea, Gonza says he thinks it might be smoke and mirrors and we've actually got more. I think it's true. And I think it's Sullivan's way of just warning fans, we've only got 30 million.
Yeah.
So Sullivan can't go on Sky Sports and say, we've only got 30 million. Well, what he can do is contact yourself or get his contacts to contact X, West employee or whatever, and just say, here, budget's 30 million. The fans get warned 2 or 3 months in advance. It's 30 million. So when we only spend 30 million, there's no anger because
managing expectations. But as I say, it would be wrong. I know people think that we have a hotline to Sullivan. All our information comes from Sullivan. That's just not true. we talk to a number of people, and it doesn't mean information like that comes from the board or one particular source. There are all kinds of people. Agents themselves want to paint a story about their clients. Other people want it to be known about certain things. So it would be wrong. Look, we're not going to talk about our sources, and we never publicly talk about our sources. I know the perception is that everything we write has been fed to us by the board, but that would just be incorrect, completely incorrect.
But some of it is.
We have contacts within the board, as I said earlier, but like X told you yesterday, it's not as frequent as some might like to think.
Fantastic. Well, listen, before I take live question from the live chat, there's quite a few of them. I think they're enjoying you. To be fair, some of them are saying fair play to you for coming on and just being honest, if you like. It'd be easier to sit there and sort of refuse to answer them and stuff. No, but it would be, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But what's the best things about doing all the things you do in the media and stuff? Because you've been able to sort of create memories like the rest of us that do.
Yeah.
You sort of create memories for yourself.
Yeah. So it's good, So I hope that West Ham's like you and many other people. West Ham's my passion, and I've got to meet people. I hope that sometimes I've made small differences in the work I've done on the SAB and the OSB, that I've been able to solve problems. Do you know what? And a lot of the work, and I know Nigel asked this about what has the SAB done, what has the OSB done. The good work we do, and Nigel will be testament to this, is the work that doesn't get seen. People come to me with a problem, often privately, and I can get that sorted by going to Karen or going to, the head of ticketing, etc. And that pleases me when we can help with stuff like that. It's never in the public eye, but it means we can cut through all the red tape that exists of trying to get things like. So that is really the contacts I've made in the club allows me to do stuff like that. But yeah, have I got to meet players and some of my heroes? Have I got to meet Tony Cottee? Is my interviewing Tony Cottee was one of my highlights. I was there in the South Bank in the 80s watching Tony Cottee. He was a absolute hero of mine. To meet him, to interview him, to interview Frank McAvenny, even though I couldn't understand him, was some of the memories that I take, that maybe if I didn't start Twitter and I hadn't done the podcast and I hadn't joined the SAB and I hadn't written for West Ham Till I Die, I may have never experienced. And, nothing's forever. So I'm enjoying it while I can, really.
Before I take your questions, there's a few coming in. Sean, we spoke on the phone Thursday night.
We did.
I'm losing. Stuff, to be honest with you. I'm completely miscommunicated on Thursday night, and you said to me, "I've got a very obscure item."
Yes.
Now this item is going for auction. This is not in the raffle. Okay, so please don't get this muddled up, because it is. I said to Sean, I think there's only about 2 in the whole world of these things. I think we're probably right. So we'll run it for a couple of weeks on social media, etc. You can leave your bid in the comments of this video, etc. Sean, would you like to show your item and explain what the item is and how you came about it?
Yeah. So this is the item. And people are probably going, what the hell is that? But if we zoom in, it might give you a clue. So this is the remote control for the scoreboard at the bowling ground. And you might say, how did I come across this? So after the last game, I went into the bowling ground. There was the last charity match played there. A number of charity matches got played. And I got to fulfill, in a previous life, I was a DJ. And one of the things I always wanted to do is play bubbles over the loudspeakers at the bowling ground. And someone, I'm not going to say who, arranged that for me. So during the charity match, I got to play bubbles. And I videoed that and released that on YouTube. Now, the place had been stripped of all the stuff that was going to auction. But in there and in the control room when I was playing it, among a few other things, was this remote control. The scoreboard had already been removed. They hadn't done the filming of that film where they blow it all up. and it was just sitting there, still connected to a cable. So I liberated it because it was due to be. I think the bulldozers, the film set were due to move in the next week. The bulldozers after that. So I liberated it, and there it's been sitting for 3 years, thinking, what shall I do with this? So I thought, what a perfect. When we spoke on Thursday, I thought, what a perfect idea. It is unique. I don't know if there's two or one. There was only one control room, so it might have been there's only one. There might have been another one or a spare, I guess, for but it's a. If you read this, it's a Neutronic scoreboard. I've sent some pictures of the scoreboard to Geo. I'm sure you can put them up somewhere, and pictures of this from the side, etc. But yeah, it's made of aluminium. It's metal. You can look up Neutronic scoreboard system on the internet. This is one authentic bowling ground remote. It's up for auction. Highest auction wins. Send your bids to Hammers Chat, and whoever the highest bid in 2 weeks' time, Hammers Chat are going to run it. I will ship it off anywhere in the world at my cost. Whoever wins it. So that's my contribution to Isla Caton.
Fantastic. Well, if you would like to bid on a stolen scoreboard,
liberated, not stolen,
pitched scoreboard controller, and then you can do it'll be on the websites after, etc., etc. But anyway, let's get to the questions in the live chat. First of all, is Vinny? He's disappeared up. He had a good one. Let me just find that question for you again. Vinny says, without a functioning independent supporters group, is it not the responsibility of big social media accounts to challenge the club?
It's a good question, but like David Baker said earlier, I think there should be independent supporters boards. You'll know I'm on the OSB and I was on the SAB before. I helped found WISA. It's a shame that hasn't worked out. I understand, and I thought, Bubbles and Paul spoke very passionately. I'm not sure how far that's going to get. But the idea of the OSB, and David touched on it earlier, we do hope, I'm pushing as well, that it becomes democratic and it includes independent groups. So it can step away from this old SAB, demeanor and try and be truly voted for people who are being represented, and the people like Hammers United and WISA can feel comfortable sitting on it. So it comes into one forum. Are the club resistant to that? Absolutely. Do they want to control this? Absolutely. But we are slowly chipping, David, myself and others are slowly chipping away at the edges. And I think come a few years' time, watch this space, I think we will get there in the end.
We'll wait and see. Liam says, did you or any other site that you know of find out what Diafasako wanted to say when he said the owners were liars after leaving the club?
I'm sure I did at the time, but yeah, it's I think things like that are a little bit difficult in the same way Payet and there are certain private things that they're the kind of things that maybe don't need to be published.
Ash, do you prefer shepherd's pie or cottage pie?
Now, you're going to say I'm only saying this for effect.
No, you crack on. If you want to choose.
I do like cottage pie. I'm a beef man and not a lamb man. So, yeah, I'm going to buck the trend and say cottage pie.
Well, I shall give the updated score. I don't know what the score is.
I'm probably the only one, but I prefer beef. I prefer pie and mash, but
yeah, someone else apparently said cottage pie. I don't remember it, so it must have been one an American lot or something when I was like in and out of the thing. Multi21 says, is there a story a board source fed you that you refuse to run?
Yes, many.
Have any of those stories, the big ones, since come out?
No.
There must be something.
There might be something, but there are some ones where we've saved something and said, no way. And I can't talk about them because some of them are still current. There might be ones in the past that have come out. I can't think of any, but there have been some and you go, no way should this information come out.
Yeah, I don't want to know a current one
Yeah.
anyway. Vinny Ryan, he's replying to your reply basically. He's saying that we're the only club in the Premier League that doesn't have an independent supporters club. You have to question why this is.
Well, I don't think that's true, because WISA is independent, and so is Pride of Irons independent. Um, it's not true. And if you look at models, I know a lot. Being involved in WISA, I know a lot of these, like Spurs supporters trust. When you look at them, they've actually got very few members. And when you ask proper fans, do you know who the Spurs supporters trust are? No. Some of them say no, they're a bunch of do-gooders that are just doing it for ego, or just doing it. They don't represent us. They don't. So this is, again, living in a West Ham bubble. Let's not just have the thought that every club has a supporters trust that all the fans are behind. No, there are plenty. If you look at the SFF website, you'll see there are multiple different groups for different clubs. Spirit of Shankly probably stands out as the model everybody wants, because everybody in Liverpool got behind it, and it went over a cause of, obviously, Hillsborough, etc., and everybody got behind that. But it's a fallacy to believe that we're the only club without an independent voice. We have at least two, with Pride of Irons and WISA. And if you look at other ones, yes, they've got independent as well, but they are the smaller. So it's, I'm sorry, but the statement is incorrect.
Mark Watt said, would you ever openly criticise the board at the risk of losing your contacts?
Yes, and I have. I could point to stories, and when I'm criticised on social media, I have often criticised the board, and so's Hugh. And do you know what? They don't care. They don't care. We've done it a number of times, and yeah, it's not all the time. Look, we're openly pro board, but when we think they've done something wrong, and they've got it wrong, I was, by the way, just to clear up, at Burnley, I was in front of the director's box at Burnley. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't throw anything or anything, but I was there with everybody else.
Why were you there?
But you know what? You've got to ask the question why everybody was there, and I think we all got swept up with the moment. It was a perfect storm. So I think we just conceded another goal, and my seat's very close in 113 to the West Stand and director's box, and sort of where every sort of gravitated, but no one really knew why we were going there. So I don't think it was people who say it was a orchestrated or organized event, absolutely not, because lots of people around me ended up there as well, and and you just get swept up in the moment, really.
So did you personally go to protest or to be nosy?
I went probably the latter. In fact, I was videoing it. Funny enough, the Premier League actually banned my YouTube footage and took it down, even though it had nothing to do with the pitch. But yeah, I was there, probably in a more journalistic way. But my colleagues, my fellow season ticket holders around me, were there to protest, without a doubt.
Ashley says, do you believe in the owners and think they are the right people to take us forward?
It's a really interesting question, one I knew you'd ask. I like to use the word best of a bad bunch. We've not had the best owners in the past, with the Cairns and the Icelandic biscuit barons and Terry Brown. I think they're well-meaning, but I don't think they can quite get us to the next level. And I wrote a story just last week on Clarence Hugh about billionaires. There was a day when a billionaire would be enough to say, I've got a billionaire, we're made. Actually, when you look at it, and I looked at all the billionaires, including Sheffield United and Aston Villa, who are coming into the Premier League, we're about 15. We've got the 15th richest owners in the Premier League. Most other clubs' owners have got more than us. They last invested into the club with their own cash in 2011. They're due to pay back 45 million in January next year, and that could be one of the reasons of the lack of money this summer. They would argue that many people don't invest in clubs anymore with their own cash, but there are models out there that go against that, and Wolves is an example. If Newcastle get bought by this Abu Dhabi £18 billion, you know, our chances of the top six are almost impossible. We're so far away, you know, in the deals we've done in sponsorship and shirts, and I've run these financial in the last few weeks. The gulf is massive, and even to get in the top 10, we could be outspent in the future. So are they the people to take us to the next level? I don't know. But the last thing I'll add is, but there's no one else out there knocking on our door offering to buy us at the moment.
So no, you don't think they are the right people?
I'm saying it depends what you define the next level as. If you're defining the next level as next six, no. If you're defining the next level as top 10,
I certainly don't define it as avoiding relegation.
I agree, but some people would.
The next, yeah, we went from avoiding relegation to top six. That was the drastic jump, though. For me, it's consistently in the top 10 a cup run. But these kind of articles is what I was referring to earlier. There was no option for that. It was avoiding relegation.
Yeah.
Top six. Now it's not top six. So the next one down is avoiding relegation, and you think, well,
no, it's not avoiding relegation to me. We've got to be pushing for 7th, 8th on a regular basis without, you know, Pellegrini is the next level without a doubt. Spending 100 million last year was next level, but we've got to back it up each year. We've got to keep managers like Pellegrini, and we've got to invest. And I don't think that's going to happen this year, and it's not going to happen next year unless they put some of their own cash to take us next level.
Gary says, ask Shaw whether he thinks a takeover is likely. You've kind of already answered that, haven't you?
No, it's not in the near future.
And he said in time frame. So if I said to you, 2023 is the magic number. That is the magic number.
It is, yeah. From a no penalty, but it's a reducing scale. No, consistently, conversations I've had with the board is that there are provisions. You know, let's be honest. Jack is being groomed to be a future chairman. Both chairmen have said that they want to hand down their shares to their children. I think that will happen. How long both of them will live is something none of us can predict. I think your next question is, what will the children do with that once they've got it? And no one else can predict that. Would they sell out? Possibly. We don't know. I think Sullivan and Gold are at a level where Sullivan doesn't need any more money. Why would he sell it? Gold is in his 80s now. What would he do? I think this is his life now. Unless someone came along to take them to the next level and gave them life presidentship, and they could still have the director's box and everything else, then maybe. But they're towards the end of their lives, and I just don't see them selling out at this stage. Money means not very much to them.
A year ago, David Sullivan told Wusa, if we don't qualify for Europe in the next 5 years, I'll stand aside.
Yeah.
Gone, 4 years left. Do you think he'll stick to his word?
No.
So you think he lied?
Knowing David Sullivan as I do, he doesn't lie.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying happened. It's, you know, you probably did an article on. I could go find on Claret and Hugh. And David Sullivan said, if we don't qualify for Europe in the next 5 years, I will stand aside as chairman. So you said you don't think he would do it. So no. He lied.
So this word lie is often used against the board. I think, and they've said this themselves, that sometimes they're over ambitious in their statements. They speak out of turn. In the same way David Gold said, if he doesn't get an 86% referral approval rate, he would step down as well. I think they say with good intentions, whether you want to call them targets, promises, whatever. I don't think they deliberately lie. But will he step down if we don't get Europe? Absolutely not.
So he lied.
That's your definition.
Yes, if you say something to someone and it's not true, you're lying.
Well, you've got to take it. I don't remember this to begin with. Was this reported in minutes? Was it reported by Whisper? I don't know, because I've not heard him say, I'll step down if we don't get Europe. It wasn't in print. It wasn't in a recorded interview.
It will be on your website.
That doesn't mean that might have been reported third hand. I don't recognise, and I usually recognise most things. I don't recognise him saying, I will step down in 5 years if we don't qualify for Europe. If he said it, fine. You've asked me what my opinion whether it's a step down. The answer is no.
Russo got invited round to his house about a year ago after everything.
Yeah, I was aware. Amanda Jacks went. Mark Walker went. And someone else I can't remember. But
one of the things was I found on the board, and that's where the OSB came from, I believe. Because
a fan on the board was discussed. Yeah.
And I am pretty certain one of them was David Sullivan said he was going to get West Ham into Europe in the next 5 years, or he will look to stand aside as chairman.
Yeah, well, I'm not dodging this. I don't remember that said, but I still repeat.
I could be wrong. I'm not writing it down. I'm doing this.
I'll just repeat. It won't happen. Right? Honest truth.
We'll wait and see. Hopefully, he gets us into Europe in the next 4 years. I think I think we've got the manager to do it. I think we're not far off with the squad, and all it takes is one cup win, then you're into Europe. So you could finish 14th and still qualify for Europe. So technically, he's done his remit, if you like. So we'll wait and see. There's quite a few questions for you. Harry Pierce says, has he yourself got directly or indirectly got any updates for us? I think he's referring to transfers.
So I mean, Gomez is certainly a possibility. I wrote this morning on Clarent Hugh that he's in Italy on holiday at the moment. Everybody thought he was at Stansted. We do want Gomez. He's a top target. We're still pursuing Mitrovic, and Gomez is not completely out of it, and Rondon is a possibility. There are other names we don't know about. There are 20 targets, and you asked me earlier. Most of the targets are not known about because Husilius, funny enough, director of football, doesn't leak. He has got a very small knit group, and he uses a favoured agent, and it doesn't tend to leak. And that's why we all missed the goalkeeper, because it was directly from him. It wasn't spread around the club, and that's why X didn't get it. I didn't get it, and no one got it. And maybe that's one for the future. We wrote to Mario actually a few weeks ago, Hughie and myself, and he politely replied that he doesn't talk to the press. He reads our website, but he doesn't talk to the press. And fair enough. Fair play to him.
Do you see that as a good thing or a bad thing?
What, not talking to Clarent Hugh or the press?
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if any leaking of any information gets out, the problem is though it comes out from the other end usually. So this is why we pick up stories from the foreign press. It's interesting it didn't come out in Spain first, but yeah, that Roberto came out of the blue. Wasn't in the Spanish press, wasn't anywhere else, wasn't in Malaga, but obviously a lot of connections in Malaga and Espanyol. Yeah, fair enough, fair play. They kept it secret.
Yeah, like I said to Gons, I think the only reason they were able to keep it secret is because of a free transfer. If there's no transfer fee to negotiate, etc. So you're not dealing with a football club. It cuts out the people that's most likely.
And he's on like 10,000 euros a week, so he's cheap as chips. David Martin is joining them.
Our new keepers on 10,000 euros a week.
He was on 10,000 euros at Espanyol. Well, who knows what they've given him at West Ham, but why give him more? What you
say about David Martin? Sorry,
David Martin. I do understand is going to join us. He's a free transfer from Millwall, as you know. His contract ends at the end of June. He's going to be our third keeper. Obviously, Alvin Martin's son, played for MK Dons, joined Millwall. Didn't play for Liverpool. Joined Liverpool, never played for Liverpool. But he'd be our third keeper. I think he's 33. And boyhood West Ham fan because of his dad, I think. But he's going to join us. Apart from that, they're keeping the transfers. Obviously, we need a striker. Obviously, we need a midfielder. And we've got a goalkeeper. We need another goalkeeper. But they're keeping the actual targets very close to their chest. If it's not out in the open, they're keeping it that way, and there won't be any leaks from the board on that.
Any idea why we're getting 3 goalkeepers?
I think they want the youngsters to go out and learn their trade. They've got big hopes for Nathan Trott, and they want him to go out to a championship club. And there's another youngster that they want to get some experience as well. So I think they've got to, no disrespect to aging goalkeepers, to back up Fabianski. Let's hope Fabianski is not needed and he plays every single game. But yeah, Roberto and Martin are 2 experienced heads to get us to a place where Trott and the other guy are ready, without a doubt.
Ian says, do you think fan criticism ever emotionally affects them, the board?
Yes. Yeah. They take it to heart. And in fact, it's well known, Sullivan actually really gets affected by bad losses, on the pitch, and personal criticism of him, even more his family, actually, and I think we're all like that, if Jack or Dave come under a lot of criticism. Karen Brady is fiercely protective of her daughter, if anything's said about her daughter, and rightly so, David Sullivan, about his daughters. So they're normal people, and people think the grief that David Gold, even Jack Sullivan, gets on Twitter, people just think, but at the end of the day, they're humans, and it affects them. I know for a fact that it affects them. That's not an advertisement, by the way, to give them more grief, but to think, at the end of the day, they're just normal people underneath.
Fantastic. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add? We're coming up to the end of the hour, etc. And then we've got Graham Howlett coming on next, and he's bound, so we need to sort of get the switch over on the go. Was there anything you'd like to add, etc.? You've got a few.
I'd like to ask you a question. I don't know are you a shepherd's pie or a cottage pie?
Neither, really.
Neither. You said you can't. You've told all your guests you can't answer that.
I think I was at primary school the last time I had them, I think. And I think we've got both, to be honest.
I want to ask you a question, right? You've repeatedly said, I'm not a fan of the OSB. Can you articulate why you're not a fan? You've heard what David Baker has to say and what I have to say, and how we're trying to chip away the club. But there seems to be a perception among a lot of people that they're never going to change their mind. And what I'd like you to is how do the OSB change your mind of you're entranced in the I'm not a fan of the OSB?
I genuinely think I'm speaking for myself only. I think your biggest barrier is the club. There was an article that did not long ago crediting the OSB with a list of things, right? And I know David Baker and the vice chairs at Simon.
Jim,
that's it. They both replied to me and said, it's not about who gets credit. Now, that's correct.
Yeah.
But why, if it doesn't matter, then why does that article exist?
Well, that's because a lot of what happens around this is the marketing team and the press team. And do we drive that? Absolutely not. But
so have you fed back to the marketing team? We don't want articles like this. We don't want credit.
Yes. Yeah, we have said, in fact, that particular article that came out, we actually tried to stop that for a long, long time going out, because we were concerned of the backlash it would cause. Sorry?
So you knew about it?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm pretty certain David Baker told me he didn't know about it.
No, we knew about there was an article coming out crediting, and we kept on saying we don't think that this would be counterproductive. Never, whether it was that particular article, we kept on saying, this could do us more harm than good, especially around not being consulted about the tickets, not being consulted about Socios. That it's not perfect, as David said earlier, and we are slowly chipping away at the club and pushing back, and we hope to them to give more ground all the time.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it. I'm trying to find the reply from David on here. But my point is, in that article, there was one thing in particular. I think correct me if I'm wrong, they might not be a charity, but there is that charity, what is it called? On the Ball, BAW, On the Ball. And they provide free sanitary for women. And now they were pushing to get into West Ham, okay? They were pushing. We've all seen it on social media.
Yeah.
So now I don't care who got them into West Ham. Worcester were obviously claiming it in the OSB.
Yeah.
No, but the point is not who got them in touch. The point is the club ended an article crediting the OSB with it.
Yeah.
And I just thought there's this charity here working their arses off to provide this excellent service for female football fans, and the club have just ignored them completely and credited the OSB. And I thought that was an opportunity, actually. The club could have promoted that charity. This charity have got into quite a lot of the 92 clubs and in Scotland as well, but they haven't done it all yet. Now, if that charity was able to then go to the next football club along, say Arsenal, for example, I don't know, let's say they're not in Arsenal, they could go to Arsenal and look at this article on the West Ham official website saying that the club have been contacted by us. We're working with them to provide this. The club didn't. The club had an opportunity.
Look, I get that. The reality is quite mundane and boring. One of the OSB members who used to be on the SAB has been trying to lobby the club about this for years on the SAB, right, before the OSB was formed. And she has. I've been at the board meetings even before this charity was probably formed, but it's irrelevant. As David said, it doesn't matter. Would we have rather not be in conflict with the fans over who takes credit? No. Do we care who gets credit? Absolutely not. And you know, some of the things that the club put out, I do cringe. It doesn't help our situation. But the truth is somewhat irrelevant. I think Nicky Hawkins said this. As long as, because we've been in blogger meetings, you and I have been in blogger meetings where some of the stuff came out that other people have taken credit for. It doesn't matter as long as we move on and supporters get a better experience, match day experience, etc.
So this is where you said to me, what needs to change? My honest answer is the club need to let you do your own thing. The club stop these articles crediting you with stuff. Do you know? And I just think it was a missed opportunity for the OSB to credit a charity on the ball to say, fantastic work by these guys. We're going to be working with them to do it. But the club didn't do that. And I thought the OSB went very quiet, actually. There's a lot of people. You've got a big profile on Twitter. You've got a big profile on Claret and Hugh. You've just sat and told us the reach of it, which is good and fair play to you. But you could have used that to correct the club and say, actually, the OSB aren't the ones to credit this. It's just charity. That never happened. So all I heard from the OSB members was, it doesn't matter who gets credit. But there was no one correcting the article. There was no one. It was sort of,
all right, fair enough. But I will say, none of you would have known we weren't consulted unless we came out, and I came out and David came out about not being consulted about the season tickets. You know, we could have just stayed quiet about that, but we didn't. We came out and said, and it was damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? If we came out and said we were consulted, they would have said, what do you do about it? And if you came out and said we weren't consulted, we were going to be damned either way.
No, because I actually thought fair play to you for admitting that, because you were almost fighting back against the club. And that's important for the OSB, that you stand up for yourself and you have a spine. And you had that by saying we weren't consulted about the season tickets. The next day you were in there with the club. In Ohio, you didn't get the price increase taken away. I understand that. That wouldn't have been a realistic target.
No, it wasn't.
I thought you came out with a reasonable compromise. You got the deadline pushed back and that. But what you missed was, you missed the away season ticket holders. People came out and said, well, what about us lot? And you, I think it was yourself that was being honest and saying, we didn't mention them, sorry about that. But David Baker was saying, oh, we didn't mention them, it's just not in the article. And you were both saying different things to people. So one of you was lying a little bit.
Well, not lying. We do, you know, we're in a meeting. We're not hearing the same things because we're talking to the head of ticketing and the executive director of marketing, or Karen Brady, and we're hearing different things. In fact, in the case of away season ticket holders, their deadline was moved afterwards, and in my view was we missed it for that day. But you have to pick your battles, Gio. The club want to control us, and you've got to pick your battles.
You applied for the OSB. The club didn't approach you. You said you volunteered to join it. Your battle is to represent the fans against the club.
Absolutely.
You get to pick your battles.
Well, you do have to, because you're not going to win all of them. Like any negotiation, when you've got two views, what the club think the OSB is and what the members think you have to be, you have to face, you have to pick your battles on which ones you can win.
But this is why we almost need a rooster, because you're now saying that you're going to pick and choose what fan complaints you're going to take back.
Well, I think the important ones are the ones we face our battles on, and I'm not saying this article wasn't an important one.
It's important.
Sorry?
Who decides if it's important?
Well, I think as a group of 17 of us, and David said we talk on WhatsApp, on etc. We discuss all the time, almost on a daily basis. And if we think that there is enough fan outrage that there's something we tackle the club. Was there, but apart from you and other people, was there a great big outrage about the article? The answer is no. A few social media accounts, mostly anti-bulb ones, made a big deal out of it. But did the fan on the street really care whether the OSB were being credited, who was being credited for sanitary projects being provided? The answer is no.
How do you know?
Because we talk to people all the time.
How many?
Well, that's difficult to say, because
how do you talk to them? How do you talk to them?
Well, each of our 17 groups. So Pride of Irons talk to their members. Sometimes we're talking in forums. We're talking. We've got
Tom. Turn your mic on a minute. Tom, were you contacted by anyone about any of this stuff?
No, I wasn't. No,
I wasn't contacted by anyone either.
Well, we can't approach the whole fan base, and that's part of what you need to have, isn't it? Is a method of communication, the whole fan base, and it's one of the things we're talking to the club about. Is the OSB needs a greater reach to people can reach us, right? There is a website, on the website /fans. Each of them have got an email. How many emails do we receive, Gio? Hardly any. Now, is that because people don't know about it, or
they don't trust you?
Sorry?
They don't trust you.
Well, I disagree with that. I think there is a minority.
Sat here and told me, though, that you'll pick your battles and you'll take the important ones to the club. But if I have an issue, why would I email the OSB? Because you might decide it's not important. I'm sorry, but if one person's upset about something, I consider that to be important.
But like David said earlier, we've all got day jobs, right? And there's only so much time. The amount of work you have to do on the OSB, right? And trying to fit every single thing in, you do have to pick your battles based on the time available to you and the time you have with the club.
Well, why don't the club give David Baker a full-time job then?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the club that. I don't think it's just not something that is in the makeup of what they're planning to do.
If it's too much work for a voluntary group, then the club needs to change something. And this goes back to my original point when you said what needs to happen, and I said the club is to blame. I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming David Baker. Listen, at the end of the day, you're getting up a lot of free time. You're getting up a lot of money, for your travel expenses, etc. Myself, Gonzo, etc. We've all gone to these blogging meetings in the past, and sometimes you're banging your head against a brick wall. Quite frankly, They're sitting there, they're nodding, they're writing down the notes, they're agreeing with you. But when you go out the room, it pretty much disappears. The notebook that they've written down in for that day, they've been writing notes for your whole session. They go, thanks for that. Sorry, we'll deal with that in the future. Next time they come in, we'll open it up again. We might refer back to it. We might not. And the problem is, Sean, people just don't trust. I'm not saying they don't.
I agree that, but what I'll say to you is I don't think an independent supporters group gets any further forward. Clubs can ignore what they want to do. They're businesses. They run it themselves. And I'm not sure there's a perfect solution. It's easy to point faults in things, but there's not an easy solution to say, how would it work any better?
Well, that's a completely different question, though. Your question to me was, what needs to change? And I'm telling you my answer. It's got nothing to do with that.
I didn't ask you what needs to be changed. What I asked you is, why are you not a fan of the OSB? Which, fair enough, you've answered. You don't trust the OSB.
Yeah, and I've given you some reasons. And
but I do think that a lot of people, including yourself, live in a social media bubble where things about the OSB and anti-board are amplified. And when you talk to wider groups, they've never even heard of the OSB, never alone Wissa, never alone Hammers Chat, never alone Claret Hugh. I've just been to Croatia and I talked to some West Ham fans out there who came from England, by the way. Never heard of half these things because I always chat about things like that. So sometimes we live in a social media bubble where things are amplified. That's all I'll say.
Maybe I do live in a social media bubble, but then I would argue that is why I know you follow like 10,000 West Ham fans or whatever on your Twitter or something. So you see a lot of these complaints and stuff.
Yeah, I do.
You see a lot of it, and I think that's important. I don't know, I follow about 4,000 West Ham fans on Twitter as well. I read our Hammer Chat forum. I read News at Mother Brown. Can't read the comments on Claret Hugh because you delete half of them. But the thing is, how can you then? This is my point, Mike. You have a Claret Hugh website. Some comments get deleted. They get moderated, correct?
The only ones that get moderated, and our policy is really clear, if people swear or are abusive to anyone, and that be that a board, another member, or anyone, we do not approve them, and they get deleted. But we do if they're critical. That's fine. But if you swear or you're abusive to any other person, living person or dead person, then we will not approve them. That's our policy, and on Facebook and on our website. Right,
we'll have to start wrapping this up because I've got Graham Howlett coming on. Like, I just want to say, Sean, I've got nothing against you. I've got nothing against David Baker. I don't. I've always been clear. I've got nothing against the people on the OSB. I had good friends on the OSB. When I seen them on the OSB, I thought brilliant. That I like to see that guy on there, etc. But you said to me, what's my problem with the OSB? And it's just trust, I guess. And
will you ever change your mind though? If it was a completely different group of people, democratically elected, would you ever change your mind? Or are you so entrenched in your view that if the club's involved or the current owners, because that's my concern, there is a group of people who just say current ownership, I will never trust them, doesn't matter what it will do.
That's two separate things. I've not said anything about the ownership.
You're not a fan of the current board, though.
Actually, go ask Tom.
It doesn't really. He states for positive. He states for positive and negative. It's not just if they do something right. It's yeah, but it's not.
But what I was saying earlier, Sean, was actually like I don't want a Newcastle style takeover. I actually want us to grow organically.
We all said it.
I would get quite a lot of enjoyment seeing David Gold being our chairman. If we win the FA Cup, there is something romantic about that idea. Because if you look at all the clubs above us, they're all foreign owners, etc. So there is a romantic there. The OSB and our owners are not connected, in my opinion. I don't see a correlation.
Okay, fair enough.
So the owners don't have to change. Will I change my mind about the OSB? Yes. Do I want you to change my mind, Sean. I want to sit here. When people watch this live stream, I can't tell you how many times I've said to people, Jake Heath is fantastic at West United, and I stand by that every single time. Do you know why, Sean? I trust him.
Yeah. And by the way, Jake, OSB is not there for every single complaint. Jake and his team are there to sort out general complaints, individual complaints for supporters, and he's got a full-time team. Jake's job is to do that. The OSB can't sort everything out. We're volunteers on a committee. Jake and his full-time team and all the I forget what they're called, the customer
supporter liaison officers,
thank you, are there to answer questions,
and they should use Jake and his team. Like I'm a big advocate for Jake. I like Jake. I think he does a fantastic job. I don't know all the supporters liaisons officers. Obviously, I've only met one or two, and they're lovely people as well, and they will go out your way. And whenever I see someone on Twitter that says something like, "Oh, look at this crap email I've got," if I see it's from Jake, I will say to them, Jake's hands are tied. If there's something Jake can do, Jake will do it for you. And I don't mind. Yeah. I don't mind saying that to people because I generally think Jake does a really, really good job. Now, if you could get that sort of image portrayed by the OSB, I will be the first one to sit on here and say, I think the OSB do a fantastic job. Use the OSB. The OSB is there to be used. I want to do that because I think it's important. I think the concept is right. I think the idea is right. I just don't think it's been portrayed right. And I think it goes back to the club. It's not you. It's not David Baker.
We look forward to that day. Whether I'm on it or not, we look forward to the day where you change your mind, Gio.
Well, you should be on it the day I change my mind because that means you've done it quick. All right, but anyway, Sean, listen, thank you for giving up your time, coming on and taking challenging questions. I respect to you and I appreciate it. And you've answered them as honestly as possible. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the donation for allocating as well.
Don't forget to put in your bids to Hammers Chat for the remote control.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sean. Anyway, take care now. Hopefully, I'll see you soon. But we might be discussing OSB in a more positive light. We might listen, you've got an interview in July. I'm offering you this, and it goes to David Baker, etc. Right now, I will happily do a video with you after your meeting in July where you can give us the updates and pretty much read out the minutes, if you like, without actually reading out the minutes. You can update the viewers of Hammers Chat, if you like, about what come out of that meeting, if you want. The offer's there, Sean.
Brilliant. All right. Good luck for the rest of the stream. All right. See you, mate.
You can now purchase a season ticket for the Hammers Chat boats for the 2019-20 season. Prices start from £60 and includes entry to all boats events that we may have, including cup games and friendlies at the London Stadium next season. Please get in touch via email at hammerschat@gmail.com or via Twitter, hammers_chat. All details are in the description below. Get in touch and we'll see you next season.